So we started off 2 years ago, spring 2015. These were our first 2 garden beds that we built. I bought the Square Foot Gardening book, and that was my first foray into gardening. I knew nothing about gardening at all before that. And I still subscribe to probably 80 or 90% of the stuff I read in that book. It's solid stuff. There's a few things that changed, but you can see the grid system here. And the idea is that each square is kind of its own little individual garden area, and you can plant something there, something different in another square. And that helps you encourage you to do things like planting different types of crops together to help keep pests from finding that crop and things like that. So we started off small and we learned a lot along the way, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way when I started small because it kept me going. So in summer 2015, I had 4 kids. My 3rd daughter was born then, and her appetite informed us that we needed to grow more garden space because and one of the main reasons why we started was when we found out that my wife was pregnant with her, we wanted to try growing all of her food. So my oldest daughters had already been subjected to other food, but we wanted to try the idea of growing most all of her food from the beginning. And we've been somewhat successful at that. I mean, I would say probably 50 to 60% of her diet has been stuff that's coming from our garden. And the other stuff is stuff that could come out of the garden, which is kind of the idea of what we like to do, is either eat stuff that we can grow or if we are growing that we can grow. And then find what we like and then keep growing more of that. So we kept expanding, and in the spring of 2016, we were getting to the point where we're starting to eat a lot of stuff out of there. So you can see one of our cabbage harvests there. And we were starting to get to the point where it was a lot to manage. So by summer of 2016, this is what we had. And watering this was a chore. And when I went on vacation, we went to Florida for a couple of weeks. And my father-in-law and my mother-in-law were watering for me, and they couldn't keep up. And I realized, okay, I've got to do something. So my next step was rainwater collection and drip irrigation. So this system here, my gutters in the house, and the water comes through here first, and it's first 20 or 30 gallons collect here. There are little holes. There are little holes go at the bottom here so it drains. The idea is as the water fills up here, it starts to divert into the tanks, and then the water is. I also have my paint this along the way. It's just trying to filter the water before it gets into there because a lot of stuff collects on the roof and just junk up there. And in between rains, it gets flushed out. So then the next step after that was to build these PVC irrigation grids. So I took PVC pipe and I drilled holes every 3 inches, and then I hooked a hose to that, and then water is sprayed, every 3 inches long, and it waters the whole bed at once. So, and here's why I'm here today, because I still have to manually hook up hoses and move them around. Now I do have an automated timer that has like 3 outlets on it, but still I've got all these beds I've got to move around quite a bit. So the next step that we're wanting to go towards is hooking these PVC grids up to a Raspberry Pi or whatever it is that we choose to use, and then have soil moisture sensors that control when all the watering happens. So whenever it detects it's dry, it waters from there. Some of the other stuff she mentioned, the pH stuff, all that would be great as well. But kind of the first step along the way is just getting into the point to where this thing can run on its own. Because this may be more, but my idea of this is I would like this to still run if something were to happen. And as of now, it's way too much for my wife to handle if something were to happen to me. And I want this to still run beyond me. So I was really excited when I heard about the group. I'm really thankful, first of all, for you guys for setting this up, because I knew that I was going to need help, because I work in software development, but I've never done anything on the Raspberry Pi outside of play with some of the robot stuff we do, or work front end once. But anyway, so that's where we're going next with it, where we want to go. Here's the Open Sprinkler project. I've done a lot of research, but I definitely want to lean on you all to find out what the best way to do this is. So one of the challenges I'm going to solve first is, so each one of these beds has its own grid. Based on standard water city pressure, about 55 pounds of pressure, which is what I can mimic from my rainwater collection. If I hook it up to an RV water pump with a solar panel, I can mimic that same pressure. Well, I can only water about 32 square feet at a time, so one bed at a time based on that pressure. So I'm trying to figure out a way to get it so I can do more than one, because each, only doing one at a time, which means I have to buy a sensor for each bed. Those are between $8 and $12 depending on where you're buying, but that's going to add up. I've got 1,000 square feet of growing space. everywhere at once. And one idea I have is to kind of build reservoirs into it, so I have things set up out in the garden so that it's water from there instead of from the main, I don't know. I've been talking to the plumber, so he has some ideas about some stuff that might work. But anyway, I just wanted to show you all what we're doing with our garden and show you, where we're wanting to go. And now I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys can show me about possible and what we can do. Does anyone have any questions about any of this stuff? Does anyone want to know any more? Yes?
What's your website?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. So here it is. It's seedthespoon.net. We're on Facebook as well and all that. And the reason why we do the blog, I don't get too deep into this, but I have an obsessive personality. Whenever I get interested in something, I want to know everything about it. In the past 2 years, has been nothing but watching garden videos and reading books and just wanting to know everything I can about it. And I want that knowledge to go somewhere than just for me and my family. I feel like I'm wasting. I don't know. I just want to do something to help other people. I don't know. The past year and the way the country is, the friction. I want to do something to put positive energy back out and to help people. So that's why we do this. My wife talks about how we make all of our own laundry detergent, dishwasher detergent, kind of stuff like that as well. It's more about just saving money, and those were the ideas that kind of started this down the path to begin with. We started trying to juice, and man, it's expensive. It's like $100 a week trying to buy stuff to juice. So we started just trying to grow, the stuff we were juicing. And then the first time I tasted a spinach leaf, I was like, oh my gosh, I like this. Like, this actually has taste. Like I could eat this by itself. And then I realized that, that with that taste comes extra nutrition, and all the stuff that comes with it is part of that taste, and that's what you're tasting. And then I've been hooked ever since. I mean, my wife will say, this kind of runs my life now. If I'm not at my computer, I'm out there. That's another reason why I do it, because, I work in software development, and I learned early in my career, well, I didn't learn this till later in my career, but I spent way too much time with my computer. And it caused me to have issues with anxiety and depression, and I went down a pretty dark road. And gardening helped bring me out of it, because now when I feel anxious or I feel depressed, I go out in the garden. And it's almost instantly, like this peace comes over me, and it brings me back down. So, I work from home mostly, and that's how I work. I spend an hour on the computer, and I go out there for 30 minutes. And it's allowed me to be better at my job, too. I mean, whenever I got stuck in a problem before, sometimes I would just keep grinding, like I'm going to figure it out right now. Well, now, I go out there, I think about something else, I come back, and then the answer changes. It's magical how it happens. So anyway, yes, sir.
Another question. That book that you talked about, that you still read?
Yes.
What's the name of it?
Square Foot Gardening.
Okay.
And if you guys are interested in starting a garden, I'll give a brief. I don't want to go too much over, so if I'm doing that, please let me know. But if you're interested in starting a garden, what I tell people is, one, Bermuda grass is, this was a big mistake I made, but I have Bermuda grass all around it. I spent more time pulling Bermuda grass out of the garden than I did anything else. So that's why I started doing this. And you see I laid down cardboard all around the area, and I ended up covering the entire area with cardboard, which, by the way, if you go to places that sell TVs, like not necessarily Best Buy, but like ATV store, like places that get big things in, okay? They're gonna have huge pieces of cardboard. So much easier than trying to lay out 100 Amazon boxes. Trust me, Daphne and I had a day where it's got windy up on us all of a sudden. There's always boxes everywhere, so lay down cardboard, wet it in really good with a hose so it stays still, and then cover it with wood chips. And you can see here. And wood chips you can get from the city of Norman for free. They collect all the trees from around the city, right into a chipper, and they have a huge pile. So you take your truck there, they dump it in the back, and it's a great workout too. I gained like 30 pounds over the winter, and I haven't been able to do all this stuff. But that's what I did every week. I got a truckload of wood chips, and I just spent 45 minutes. My oldest daughter here, we can do it in 30 minutes. We can unload. We timed ourselves. We got pretty fast at it. But so that's and then so you have that area covered, and then you square out, you clear out the wood chips where you want the gardens to be, and you want to have aisles about 2 feet between, so you can get carts between and stuff like that. And so then you build a box, or you can, whatever kind of container you want to use. I started by buying rosewood, and I wasn't going to be able to do it. That was going to cost me too much money. So I started collecting scrap wood from houses being built around the neighborhood, and I just walked to the foreman, and they said, take whatever you want. I collected a bunch of pallets and tore them apart, built my compost bin. So I tried to just, collect stuff and be as frugal as I could about it. The most expensive part is the soil mix, and that's the part you don't want to spend on. The square foot gardening method is 1/3. It's a mix of 3 different ingredients in equal proportions of vermiculite, which is this coarse rock that's been blown up, and it basically helps retain water, helps with water management. Peat moss, which just kind of adds some structure, and it can be a little acidic, so I don't get too deep into that. And then the third ingredient is compost, which is the most important part, because that's the plant food, essentially. And, you know, I have my own compost bin where I make my own, but even now I just had to spend $140 on a composting calendar, which 2 years ago, if you told me I'd done that, you know, spent $140 on a calendar, I would have told you you're crazy. Here I am. Never thought I'd be a worm farmer either, but I have a worm bin, like 1,000 worms in there that I farm, and I'm sorry, I've gone pretty deep down the rabbit hole with this, but it's good. It's helping a lot. Yes, sir.
What kind of worms eat? Can they eat like stuff that you wouldn't put into a normal compost pile?
So the way that our house works is everything that my daughters don't eat or my 2-year-old gets kind of thrown on the floor. And then whatever the dogs don't eat, we sweep up and that goes to worms. So yeah, there's nothing they won't eat. I mean, like plastic and stuff, obviously. But what I do for my worms is I do paper shreddings and coffee grounds and then kitchen scraps. And then I've got a couple neighbors that juice, so all the pulp that comes from that, and eggshells, and I just throw it all in there. And I like doing that better than composting that stuff, because when you compost that stuff, it takes a lot longer, whereas the worms just get right on it, you know. When I do my compost, I do mostly leaves. I get bags of coffee grounds from Starbucks. Those are great sources of long-term nitrogen release. Then I get just just as many organic nutrients as I can, you know. So like the cottonseed meal has stuff that's left over. I get that. Spent brewery grains are great. So if you have a friend that brews beer, the stuff that's left over, that stuff is great. So, and that's the idea. Just with compost, you want to have as many different ingredients as you can, because each ingredient has its own nutrient to provide, you know. And so the next step I'm going down is I'm trying to fill in some of these areas with more places for beneficial insects to live. Because right now it's pretty flat, and you know, it's easy for bugs to find my stuff. Even though I mix herbs around and try and do things to help them when they can't find it, it's pretty easy for them to find it. So I'm going to add in more flowering bushes and just things like that to create a habitat for bees and dragonflies and praying mantises and all those to live in. And one of the key things about all this is I try and be, I've been completely organic up until now. And it's simple with square foot gardening because the compost is going to give you all the nutrients you need except for nitrogen. And the nitrogen is really the only thing you have to keep supplying. Well, that's easy because you can buy fish fertilizer at Walmart for a big jug for $5. I put that on there every 3 or 4 weeks, so that's all the nitrogen I need. I get a soil test once a year just to see if I'm low on anything else. But those other nutrients don't really go away. They're not water soluble like nitrogen is, where nitrogen will go away on you. So, sorry for rambling over there. Does anyone else have any questions?
Well, do you have any problem with wind? Because one of the things we have, we're kind of, our neighborhood is more spread out. We don't get as much shelter from.
Yeah.
Do you have to replace, you know, a lot of that topsoil every year?
No, mulch is very important for that. So that's another thing to mention. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I started is I didn't mulch enough. So the top inch of soil was always dry. Even that, like 3 hours after watering in the middle of summer, it was dry, right? Well, if you put 3 inches of leaves on top of there, it stays, you know, the top inch of soil stays wet for, you know, 2 or 3 extra days. And one thing to Google or to look up is called Back to Eden. It's this gardening method that incorporates, basically this guy went out in the forest and kind of studied the forest floor and then tried to incorporate the ideas that he learned from that into his garden. So it's, you know, that's kind of where the mulch thing came from. But if you go out and just with Thunderbird, we go hiking a lot down there. And when I'm down there, I try and study, you know, the same way he did. And what you're going to see is the bottom layer of where everything is going to be a mix of bark that's falling off the trees and leaves and all that kind of stuff like piled up, right? Well, that helps with moisture retention and everything else, and also the leaves break down. Worms love to eat them, so it's just you're trying to build this whole ecosystem. You know, that's what I'm trying to do here, so that it kind of runs itself, so that I'm as hands off as possible. So, and I'm getting away from some of the square foot garden stuff too, especially with certain plants, because like these raised beds drain really fast, which is great for some stuff, you know. And also the way how loose the soil is great for things like carrots and onions and potatoes that need to grow underground and expand, you know. But tomatoes don't like to dry out as quickly as they do here. So I'm not doing tomatoes in the square foot garden bed anymore. I'm going to dig a hole. See these beds here, let me explain these for a second too. These ones that are up on legs. I did that because this fence is, you know, south. So in winter, this angle of the sun mixed with the shade comes all the way out past there. So when I first built them, they were on the ground like that one was there. But I couldn't grow anything from October to March or whatever. So that's why I built those on ledge. And the problem is that the problems I have with the raised bed are amplified because now it's off the ground. So now I've got even more drainage issues. I've got wind going below it. So in the winter, it's colder. In the summer, it gets hotter. You know, it's just, so that's one thing to consider with raised beds like that. And you can manage it. It's got to water more. It's got to be a little more hands-on than I want to be with this. So I'm going to be moving these somewhere else, and that's still up for negotiation. I was promised this half of the yard. So yeah. But anyway, I'm going to plant tomatoes. I'm just going to dig a hole the size of a decent-sized pot, you know, like a 5 or 8 gallon pot. Dig a hole that large, and then fill that in with soil mix there, plant, and then cover that all with mulch. And then I'll have all the mulch around it. So I'm using some of that water to and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I am now, is taking the stuff I learned from square foot gardening and then using it where it makes sense. And it makes sense for a lot of crops, you know. And it makes sense probably if you're anywhere else other than Oklahoma. But that book was not written for Oklahoma. No. Yeah. But you know, the wind thing, and you can do things with windbreaks. You know, T-posts are pretty cheap, and you can find them on the side of the road a lot. Especially like in neighborhoods that were built about 3 or 4 years ago, because those trees don't need them anymore. So people would kind of throw them out on the curb. So big trash day, I just kind of drive through.
Those are what you have there.
I don't think I have any. Oh, so these T-posts here. Yeah. So these are 8-foot T-posts I bought at Tractor Supply because I grew my tomatoes up here last year. Again, I'm not doing that this year. I'm going to do a quarter weed with tomatoes this time. Which is basically just having T-posts and then string UV things, you know, in and out and fill up. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, T-posts are, I mean, that's the cheapest way to go for trellising, and then for windbreaks, and you can buy shade cloth or burlap or whatever you want for. I'm going to try a living wall this year. So on the west side of my bed, which is right over here, last year I had, you know, shade cloth hanging up. Okay. I want to do something more efficient than that. So I'm going to have a wall, you know, have one of these panels over here, and I'll have something that likes me. So like southern cowpeas or a bean variety of love. So I'm going to grow them on that wall. So then I'm not just wasting that wall space on shade cloth, that energy from the sun killing something. Right. Sorry, I love efficiency. It's kind of what I need now. Yeah. So it's okay.
You were talking about growing tomatoes and having trouble from growing out, drying out. Something you can do, I don't know if you tried it. Have you ever made like upside down tomatoes?
Yes, I've tried it a little bit. We had one of those patio things, and they did fine. Yeah, they did great. Just trying to take that to like.
Water goes down if you like put mulch and herbs on top. Like it holds water for a lot longer.
I think the problem we have that one is we got a really windy day, and then since they weren't like trellised or anything, they were kind of dangling, you know. But especially the cherry tomatoes love that type of environment. Which in Oklahoma in general, the smaller the tomato, better it's going to do. Which makes sense, you know. Because we have limited moisture here, and it takes more moisture to make bigger tomatoes. Now you can still do big tomatoes, it just requires more hands-on care and more work. And tomatoes are a fickle thing. I mean, I got one of the big lessons I learned last year was to stop using horse manure. I was bringing in a truckload of horse manure every month or so, and that was one of my main ingredients in the compost. Well, what I found out was that the majority of fields now are sprayed because herbicide won't graze on them. And it's great for horse owners because there are certain weeds that will kill the horse if they eat it. Well, this makes it there's no weeds at all. The problem is that herbicide is really good. It lasted 3 years. It goes through the horse, right into the root, and then it takes up to 3 years to break down. Well, when all my tomatoes suddenly just shriveled and died on me. And I'm like, what did I do? Like, left charts, like I did everything right. I'm freaking out. And I was going through a master gardener class then, and I was talking with the head soil scientist at OSU. And 15 minutes into the conversation, he's like, we tried this, and we finally get to the whole what if it's herbicide. I'm like, I guess. And we, you know, talk through it, and then the horse thing, and I'm like, oh, well. So that was a hard lesson to learn, especially when I was reading horror stories on the internet about how it takes like 3 years for this stuff to go away. The raised bed stuff situation helped me because basically I just gave it a bath. Every week I would run the irrigation for an hour, and I just try to flush as much stuff out as I can. And now I don't have, I was even able to replant some tomatoes last year at the end of the season and got a pretty decent harvest in October from it. So, and then that's a key thing to mention too, I guess. We try and grow year round. Kale, spinach especially will grow all winter, even uncovered. I have these, I wish I brought a picture of it, but I have these PVC hoop house covers that I built, where I just attach PVC, you know, kind of in a dome. I'm building a tent over this with door hinges on the back so I can lift that up. below should be out of freezing right now, but we're gonna get a couple days of freezing. So I'm gonna take water jugs, and I've already done it, and cut the bottom out, and just kind of stick that over the top of it. So that's what I try to do, is just try to be as efficient as I can about things. Yeah.
I see you have some trellising, beds on the left side of your yard. Is that to keep, is that to like block sun?
Oh no, I have stuff growing in that. So I have tomatoes growing. Are you talking about these right here?
Yeah, but like when they grow up, is that to like block the sun so you can grow like things that need less sun on the other side?
Yeah. So you always want to put your trellis stuff on the north side of the bed.
Yeah.
That way, you just think about spacing things down. So taller stuff is on the north, and then the more you go down, the shorter you get. Now I took that idea too far, and I didn't think about other things. Like for example, I planted carrots all along the front row here, right? Well, I don't have to touch carrots until I harvest. Broccoli, I've got to touch all the time because there's bugs on it and stuff. Well, I have that in the middle of the bed, so I'm not doing this all the time. So, those are the things I'm trying to learn from and be smarter about. So I'm putting the root crops in the middle. So I'm not, when I harvest it, it's not a big deal to go do that. But that's one thing you got to pay attention to, is making sure you're always putting, unless there are strategies where if you want to plant like spinach and kale and lettuce are really hard to grow in the summer. Because once the air temperature gets, or the root temperature technically get above about 75 or 80, start bolting the seed. All of my gardens here in the first summer were out in full sun, right? I thought, well, great, I'll take all the sun I can, right? That'll make more vegetables. Well, no, because even like tomatoes don't produce fruit if the temperature is above 90. So now I have a bunch of beds over on the east side of my house, so it's shaded in the afternoon. And I have one of those cheap laser temperature guns. I've gone out there and measured the difference, and it's like 30-degree difference in the middle of the day. It's huge. So
that solves the blossom drop problem?
oh yeah. It's for tomatoes, it's gonna be air temperature. For the greens, it's gonna be root temperature. So it's kind of different between the two. And there are also varieties you can grow. Like there's a New Zealand spinach that does really well. So
Is there anything that does grow in 110-degree heat?
peppers. Now they still won't. It's just. I mean, they'll grow fine. They just don't produce fruit. Like the whole flowering process and all, like it doesn't do that. Now it still grows. So in the middle of August and September, you're really not going to get much here unless it's in the shade in the afternoon. But it'll be fine because once the temperatures come back down, it'll be good to go. And peppers do really well with heat. Also the southern cowpeas I mentioned before, which is basically just a bean variety. Which something I did not know, just kind of blew my mind, was that the only difference between green beans and dry beans, how old they are. Like once I learned that the first time, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like black-eyed peas are southern cowpeas. They're also called black-eyed peas. Well, that's if you let them go all the way to seed, and then you eat the dried seeds, right? Well, a green bean is just that, and it's still green, and it hasn't gone to seed yet. So you just pick it early when it's green and eat it then. It blew my mind when I learned that. I was like, I should have known that by now.
I think okra will do well.
Oh yeah, okra does really well.
About 6 or 7 feet tall too.
Squash, pumpkins, watermelon, all that kind of stuff does well.
I had really good luck with eggplant.
Yeah.
I don't know who eats eggplant, but it's a whole bunch of it.
I had like 40 of them last year, and I don't think we had one of them. I think they all went to the compost. Because the problem with eggplant was we let it go too long. You got to pick it when it's early, and you got to go a bit rough, and yeah.
I was just giving back something away. But they grow great in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Even in the heat-ish.
I mean, Oklahoma can be challenging. I mean, we have a lot to work with. We've got a lot of sun, which is something we need a lot of. I mean, when we get rain, we get a lot of it. So like that's why I have 600 gallons in my rainwater collection, which looks like a lot, but that's only enough to water my garden once every 2 weeks. So I'm gonna need a whole lot more to actually depend on it.
Have you ever grown zucchini?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Zucchini?
Uh-huh.
How do you manage pests like squash bugs and stuff?
Yeah. Okay, so number one, I pay my daughters over here $1 for every squash bug we have. I'm not even kidding. And Brooklyn made like $6 a day in the spring. That's one of my strategies, obviously. But on top of that, so I have these stations set up everywhere where I took yellow solo cups and I put sticky all around the outside of it. Okay, and then inside of it, I put a cotton swab with clove essential oil sprinkled on it. So bugs see that and they think, hey, that's squash flower. Okay? Well, they land on it, and you're not going to get rid of all of them that way because there's too many, but then you know what you're dealing with, and then you know how many you're dealing with, and you can manage, like you can count each day to see how many there are, see how you're doing. The biggest thing I try and do is find the things that I can eat that way. So aphids, I order like 500 ladybugs on Amazon every few months or whatever, and I release those slowly. Now they'll fly away. I mean, but as long as you release it at night, they only fly during the day. So, and then if there's food there, there's water there, why are they going? They only leave once they're done with the aphids, which bit me last year because they got rid of all the aphids. They left and the aphids came back. So, praying mantis though would be the one for squash bugs.
Squash bugs?
Yeah. But I mean, with squash bugs, you really just gotta. Squash bugs don't scare me as much as the squash vine borer, which that little thing I hate so much. It looks like a moth, and what it does is it lands at the base of the squash plant, and it lays its egg inside the plant, and the caterpillar starts eating. There's some things you can do to help with that. You can wrap the base of the plant with aluminum foil. Now, not too tight because you don't want to girdle it, but it makes it where the bug can't get into there. Also, you can mulch with cedar, which also, bugs don't like the smell or taste of cedar or whatever. I don't know why necessarily it works, but you can mulch with cedar. That helps. You can cover the plant with a floating row cover until a male flower is produced, which you can tell because the female flowers have like a little mini fruit, like right before the flower. Like you can see a little bulge and the males don't. So you kind of just wash the plant, and then once there's a female flower, you got to take that off because you need pollinators to come in. But by then the plant's strong enough, it could probably fight off because it's really the young plants that get. Another thing you can do is you can plant something like, so there are certain squash varieties that have really, really tough stems that squash vine borers can't get into. Blue Hubbard is one of the varieties. If you plant that as the first squash of the season, okay? They'll all come, the squash vine borers will come to that, see that's what's there, can't get in, so then they'll fly off. So, so it's just trying to, you gotta know your enemy. It's our reward.
Does mixing the different crop types, like in square foot gardening, help with that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so for cabbage moss, for example, I planted rosemary all around my cabbage, because that's the number one, so the way that bugs find their plant is through smell.
Right.
So that's why herbs are so good at repelling bugs, because they're really strongly scented, right? So I put like rosemary all around my cabbage plants. I put onion, I have a wall of onions around my entire border now of the bed. They're like my bodyguard onions there, basil with tomatoes. Go ahead, yeah.
I was gonna say, you need to host a workshop and stop making us this information free.
Well, I have a website and stuff, but I don't know. I just want to give back and help out. My hope is that one day this will turn into something I can do full time, and I'd like to have a CSA or something. My uncle has 5 acres that we're working on turning into, area that we can grow stuff and then do just like a, $20 a month you get all the salad greens you want, kind of thing. So.
You can sunbake the Bermuda grass.
Yes, it's solarized. Yeah, that works well too. Which
So
basically.
cover it with water and you cover it with plastic.
Yeah.
180 degrees. Yeah.
Also, a flame meter is cool too. Have you seen those? It's like a full-size propane tank. You hook up to a torch. I don't know how I can blow myself up with this guy. But basically, you do the thing you talked about. You cover it with plastic, okay, and then you take that off, and you let whatever's there germinate, and you come back with that flame meter, just kind of go over for a second, and then that plot is ready to go.
Scorched here.
Yeah. Some of my favorite resources on gardening, where I learned the most from, there's a YouTube channel called 1 Yard Revolution. It's really good. And I like to go with stuff that's based in science and stuff. I try and stay away from some of the, some of the stuff can get a little crazy, like people love Epsom salts, but if you do use too much of it, you can, introduce too much salt to yourself. So there's, you got to be careful about some of this stuff. So I like to follow stuff that's based in science, and have some background to it. So 1 Yard Revolution is one of them. He's a guy that grows all his own food, and he has it set up for it. It's pretty efficient. That's the best one. Square Foot Gardening is a good book. If you're interested. Huh?
I have a copy of it in the Star Space Library.
Awesome.
So yeah, you can come check it out.
If you want to know more about winter growing, Elliot Coleman is the guy's name. He has a bunch of different books, but he has a farm up in Maine, and he grows year-round. So those are some of my favorite resources.
Can you post that inside?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
also, we are a resource. If you go to slack.techlahoma.org, you can put in your email and sign up, and we have a channel called Read. And yeah, if you're not in that, you should definitely join it.
Yep, and Amy and I are both in there, and if you guys have any questions or anything, I can help any of you guys with anything.
Yes, please